everyone for joining us. This is the Travel Collective Tips and Tricks series, and tonight we're talking about staying connected when you travel. So we have travel ninja Cindy once again. So hey Cindy, good to see you again.
Good to see you too, April. This is going to be good. I'm
I
excited.
know. So how much of a concern is connectivity for you when you travel? I know you do a lot more traveling internationally than I do, so.
It really depends on like what you're doing when you're traveling. So if I'm traveling for work, connectivity is a huge deal. If I need to check on work, it was a big concern. When I traveled when my kids were small, also a concern, right? So there really depends on kind of why I'm going, where I'm going, how long I'm going to be gone. So I think about all of those things. When I think back on trips that I've taken and my connectivity concerns, like I said, those are the things that I would think about when if I had to leave my children home, like leave them with my mom, that was fine, but I also wanted to be able to be reached if there was an emergency.
Of course.
Right. And if I'm traveling for work, then I obviously need to have connectivity the whole time. And oftentimes my company or whoever I was working with would help provide that, but maybe not. Maybe I'm doing something on my own. And even if I wasn't traveling for work, even if it was a personal thing, sometimes your work connectivity, like you still need to be somewhat tethered, right? To that.
Yeah,
I need to be available to answer questions or whatever. So I think for everyone, your connectivity is really personal. I hear a lot of people say, oh, just leave all that at home. You don't need that. And that's great if you can do that.
Right.
But most of us in, the current era that we live in, you're going to want some sort of connection, right? Whether it's just for emergency purposes or to post to social media.
Oh, that's true.
You might think about all of that. And I like to be connected. Like I'm on the internet. I use my computer a lot. So it's very important to me to have at least Wi-Fi access in most places that I go to. So.
Yeah. So what are some of the options we have for staying connected?
So there are tons of options. So there's really the primary two things that you're really going to look at is whether or not the cell service works and what your Wi-Fi access is, right? So some people can operate just with Wi-Fi and they won't need their cell service. And you can often do that even if you want to make phone calls because you can use things like Skype and WhatsApp,
right.
other things to make phone calls or connect with your friends or FaceTime. A lot of that stuff is available just over Wi-Fi.
Right.
But you're not going to be able to like call the museum to see if they're open or call for help if you're out somewhere if you don't have service, right? Wi-Fi is probably not going to cut it. So again, it would depend on like what you're doing. So I'll just give a really good example was when I went to Iceland and I took my group with me. Now I have T-Mobile as my service. I have that sort of $10 a day for the international rate, which is not super expensive, but it is when I was planning to be there for like 14 days. Like that can be quite pricey if you need it every day. Now they only charge you when you use it, so that was kind of nice. I didn't have to do it ahead of time. It's just if I made a phone call, I would get charged $10 just for that one call, but now I have it for the next 24 hours, right?
Okay.
So when I looked up that, I was like, okay, I feel safe. My phone, will work when I'm in Iceland. I checked with my provider and made sure that was the case. And then you also need to check and make sure your physical phone will work. So that was something that I didn't know on a couple of other trips. If you have older technology, like an older phone, that may or may not work in that area. So check to see, whether your phone will actually work in that country. Your service provider would probably be the best person to talk to if it doesn't already say that. If you have a newer phone, likely it'll be fine if you've gotten a phone in a year or so. But if your phone is a couple of years old or you've got one of the cheaper phones, like I think it was the Costa Rica trip, when we found out that some of the phones, because my kids had phones, we found out that they're like little econo phones because kids lose phones. So you buy them the cheapest one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's like you're getting the $20 phone because you lose that all the time. So they have that way. But so those phones don't always work on the networks there. And you may have to change some of the settings in your phone. So again, I highly encourage people to make sure that both your phone works and that your carrier works. but I didn't have to pay for that service. I just had the ability to use it if I needed it. And then otherwise, I was planning to rely on Wi-Fi when I was there. But Wi-Fi wasn't going to be available for me when I was driving. So we drove the ring, which is all the way around Iceland. So we were only going to have Wi-Fi then when we were at our lodging.
Right.
And
Okay.
so I rented a portable Wi-Fi for us. So you can get Yeah, so you get a little hotspot basically. So it's connecting to the cell service, but it's providing Wi-Fi for all of us. So 10 people could be on there at one time. So then we were able to do things like, oh, can you check that website to see if that place is open, or hey, whatever. We could all do that while we were on the road.
Right.
Rented it in country, so we knew that it would work there in Iceland, and it had pretty good coverage. I did have to use my cell service only a couple of times, but it was really nice that I had that as an emergency backup. So that's something to make sure that you think about, is how you're going to do that. When you were asking like what kind of services there are, things like Skype and WhatsApp and other types of Wi-Fi type calling.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to practice that a little bit with the family and friends that you plan to use it with.
That's probably smart. Yeah.
So if you're normally, like my mom, for example, I normally just call her on the phone. She's really good at using the telephone, no problem, right? But it's not real easy for her to use Skype or those other technologies, but that's what I want to use most of the time when I'm traveling. So we typically do 1 or 2 test calls before I go, make sure she has the app on her phone. I do that with my kids as well. Make sure you have this app, because this is how I'm planning to reach out if there's an emergency or something I need. So there's lots of different options out there about how you can stay connected, but you really, the basic two are Wi-Fi and cell coverage, and making sure you understand what your phone will physically do on both of those is really helpful. So you can also get a satellite phone, which I looked into a couple of times. Most places you're not going to need that, but if you're going to do off-roading or you're going to do backpacking or hiking, you definitely want to look at something like that. That might cost a little bit more, but you might want to.
Still really big? I mean, they used to be so big, and you're right. A satellite phone, if you're like hiking the Appalachian Trail or the Camino or something in Spain, you'd probably want something like that. Just for that emergency, I'm thinking. Because otherwise your cell phone may not work.
Yeah, and also just depending on what the cell phone service is in the country. So a satellite phone is a safety net. Right now there are so many different variations of that. There's a product called the Spot, just as it sounds, Spot. And Spot sells several different types of devices. They're typically for hikers, and the lowest end one is something that you just sort of turn on and you press a button, and it notifies emergency personnel and gives them your GPS coordinates. So that's all it does. You can't really talk. You might be able to text a little bit. You can't do anything else with it, but it's a safety net, right? It's this. A lot of people carry them when they do some heavy backpacking and hiking, and I would encourage somebody to get something like that if you felt a little unsure when you were traveling.
Right.
Again, you want to look at how it works in the country you're in. So if you're backpacking in a different country, it may or may not work. So each one of these products has a different provider. Now, an actual satellite phone, they are a little bit bigger, a little clunkier. And some of them you can buy just a device, and then you just pay for the service by the month or the day when you're using it. But the device itself is kind of expensive. You can also rent them. And if you're on a shorter trip and you're only going to do this one time, renting the device might be the most economical way to go, just to give yourself some safety net. For that kind of emergency, I need to call somebody. But there are lots of options for staying connected just when you're going to country, and satellite phone seems like an extreme measure, but it definitely would help if you are really concerned, right? You're like, I'm going to be driving the countryside, and I don't know what's here, and I don't know what's available. I may never use it, but for $200 or whatever that is, I'll feel better if I know it. I have it in my bag. So
yeah, exactly. So the item that you were using in Iceland, was that something that you got when you rented the car, or you had to go somewhere else to get that? Tell us a little bit more about that. Just
Well,
because I
so
know Iceland's a popular destination.
Iceland actually rents them right at, you can rent them with your car, but that costs more. I did my research and they said just rent it right there at the airport. You can actually get it at the like convenience store. They sell
Oh,
them.
wow.
So, and then when you come back to the airport, you drop it off in like a little mailbox. Like there's a little
Yeah.
box. You put it in a little package and you drop it off. Super simple. But some places you can get them. Like I said, with the rental car, they'll do it. There's also a number of companies that provide them. Just you can just order one and have one. Like there's
Hmm.
called TEP. There's a couple of companies where you can buy one, maybe it costs $150 to have one. And then again, you just kind of turn it on when you go to different places. And those services, again, will tell you which countries it works in. And if you travel a lot or you're going to be gone for a while, those devices are pretty handy. Like I said, we could have
Right.
people on it. It works in this country. I'm paying whatever fee it is, but we're all able to get to the internet, even when, we were pulled off of the side of the road in Iceland
Yeah.
at a waterfall. We could still Google and find out where things are, and we didn't have to wait. And we could share pictures back and forth
Right.
because we had that capability. So it's definitely worth the investment, I think, in looking at a Wi-Fi device if you're going to be mobile and that connectivity is important to you, both for safety reasons as well as just convenience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and those it's kind of like a hot spot, right? So they're really helpful if you go places and you don't have it in your hotel, or if you have the hot spot, you don't need to worry about what the hotel Wi-Fi is like because
Yeah,
you got
that's
your
true.
own, right?
Right. Right.
So that's really helpful.
Yeah, that's excellent. So, how do I find out if the phone I have will work when I'm traveling?
Yeah, so there's, when you start to research like how to use your phone overseas, one of the things that just check and see if you have an international plan and what that costs. So call your provider, find out what the situation is. Also find out, you need to look and see what the country where you're visiting, how their cell service is working. Because sometimes your options are incredibly limited. So for
Yeah.
example, when I went to Cuba and a couple other countries, Belize, their cellular service is managed by the government. So,
Oh,
and oftentimes you can't get roaming. Like it's super expensive. It's not something you have to use their service when you're there. So
okay.
you have a couple of options in those types of countries. One, you can purchase or rent a phone when you get to the ground. They'll have places at the facility, or you can get a local SIM card.
Okay.
And a local SIM card is probably the most economical way to go rather than running a phone. Plus, you'll have all your own stuff on it, right? You'll
Yeah.
have enough
Yeah.
phone. But then your phone has to be unlocked. So most
Oh,
phones are locked. And when I say locked, they're locked to your carrier. So I have a T-Mobile phone. So my phone is likely locked to T-Mobile, which means it wouldn't work for if I put an AT&T SIM in it or another
right.
provider, it just won't work. Um,
Right.
you can typically get your phone unlocked by your provider, but I would check with them and make sure that they've done that. Um, so that when you get to the country, you can just buy the SIM card. It comes on like a little credit card, and you just pop it
Yeah.
out, right? And you put the different SIM card in and put your other one away somewhere so you don't lose it because you'll need it when you come
Right.
back.
Yeah.
But you can just hop that one in. Now, I always tested that. So you can also easily test if your phone is unlocked, even if they say, oh, yeah, it's unlocked. Just go home, find somebody else who has a different carrier and swap with them.
Okay.
If you can use an AT&T and your T-Mobile, then you'll be fine when you get there. Just make sure it works. And if it doesn't work, then there's still something wrong and take it back to the provider. You do not want to be in country and find out your phone's not unlocked because
Right.
it'll be a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done that a couple of times with a SIM card where I've purchased that. That works really well because then you have your own phone with all your apps on it.
Right.
Their data, so you typically pay, a monthly fee or for a couple weeks or whatever. That's really easy. I was not able to do that in Cuba. So I purchased calling cards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and a lot of countries will still do calling cards. So you just use the calling card. So you're on their local network. And
Right.
if you're paying your roaming fees, which back in years ago, that was really expensive. Roaming fees were
Yeah.
they're a little bit better now. But if your roaming fees are really expensive or you have trouble, a calling card is another option that you can purchase just a calling card and call out. But again, you need to make sure that your phone uses the same technology. So 5G may not be available where you are, and the GSM phones, so that they may not be available. So make sure that your actual physical phone will work with the technology that they have in that country, and then make sure that you have roaming available or check with your provider. And if not, you're going to have to look at doing something like a SIM card or a calling card or some other option to make
Right.
phone work.
Right.
And every country is different. I know I've talked to somebody else about just making a list of understanding how that works, because some of these
Yeah,
countries,
it does. Yeah, each country. Because I was just thinking, like, you've been to Vietnam, you've been to some of these countries that are not, they're not in Europe, so they may do things completely different than we do, than we've gotten used to. We don't even, I think we kind
right,
of take the whole phone and cell phone thing now for granted. We don't really.
you do. And so you think, oh, I'm just going to go there and I'll pay the roaming rate. It'll be
Yeah.
fine. But again, I mean, I have used that $10 a day thing with my T-Mobile service, lots of places. But I'm glad I did that little bit of research, because that would not have worked in Cuba. There's this, you either use their SIM card or a calling card, because you're only on their network and they don't allow for that. So,
Right.
and I had a similar problem. A similar problem in Costa Rica. Actually, Costa Rica, we did a SIM card and I got calling cards, because my kids went, so they wanted to have access to use their own phones as
Right.
well. So
Right.
we did that too. So I mean, it just depends on what you're doing, but I do think making sure you can't, like you said, you just can't use that assumption, right? That
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah.
everyone has Wi-Fi and cell service.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, and the cell service is available in Cuba, but the Wi-Fi was so strange, by the way. So Wi-Fi was available using the card. I had to use a kind of a calling card even to get on the Wi-Fi, but you
Right.
couldn't get on the local Wi-Fi or on the local network unless you were in a major hotel or a public park.
A park. Oh.
So strange, really weird thing is she'd go to a public park and it's just littered with people all sitting on their phones, because
Ah.
everyone's there because they have free Wi-Fi in the park.
Right. Right.
So even the locals, that's where they go. They get, and a lot of them are using the calling cards too, because they don't have access, to the monthly service
Right.
or whatever. So everyone is on, the Wi-Fi at the park. So you definitely make sure you understand where you have to go.
Yeah.
The house that I was at, and either go to the hotel or go to the park to get on Wi-Fi, and that was, a bit of a pain, which meant when I was, at home getting ready for
Right.
bed, I wanted to check something, none of that was
Yeah.
happening. I had to make a special trip, right? So it's interesting, the connectivity challenges that we have from one country to the other.
Right. And things that a lot of us just kind of, like I said, we take it for granted. I'll just take my cell phone. It works everywhere.
Right.
So what about using internet cafes? Is that still pretty common internationally, or?
There are still a lot of those around, especially in countries like that, like South America and Central America. I even think I saw them in Vietnam. I didn't use any, but they're still there, and I would caution you just not to do anything financial on it. So don't check your bank balance. Don't log into that when you're there. I don't trust the internet cafe situation, because I'm not sure who's operating that Wi-Fi and what they're doing, and what they're paying attention to. I feel a little safer in the hotels using the Wi-Fi and so forth, but again, be very cautious of that. If you do go into an internet cafe and check your email or check your social media, just change your password when you leave. Like, not fair. Leave it the same, then go back out, change your password, so that they don't have any of that. They might be those kinds of things. So I'm very cautious of that. But I mean, internet cafes are great places to just get on the internet and check, like print your boarding pass, check to see if something's open. So say you decided not to bring your laptop, but you just want to look at the internet for some reason, right? Look something up to an internet cafe and getting on one of their devices and looking something up, perfectly fine. Even probably posting to social media and so forth. But again, when you leave, just, get back on the Wi-Fi someplace else and change your password so you're not leaving it there for the internet cafe. Because you're in an internet cafe, you're using their device. And so that's, like I said, that's what concerns me about that. I don't think it's a big concern just using Wi-Fi in different places, but using a device and also remembering that you logged out.
Oh, yeah.
If you log in, we have a tendency to just get up and, close the browser, but you left it open. You left yourself logged in. So just, be cautious about that. A lot of people don't want to bring their iPads or laptops or devices when they travel, but sometimes you'll find yourself that you do need access to a computer. So that's really what they're there for. But I certainly wouldn't be checking my bank balance, and I would be very cautious to make sure that I not only logged out, but changed my password when I wasn't using it. So
yeah, good information. So how do you typically stay connected with your family and friends when you travel? I think you kind of spoke a little bit about that earlier, but
yeah, and I typically let my family and folks know what to expect for this trip. Again, as I said at the beginning of the call, every trip is different, whether I'm traveling for work or I'm traveling for fun or I'm trying to disconnect and, relax. So making sure that they know you're not going to hear from me or connectivity is going to be a problem, just giving them a heads up is helpful. And so it might be different depending on the trip. I might tell someone, like when I was in Cuba, I told my family and friends, I'll try to post something every couple of days.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah, that's smart.
Right? But I can't guarantee that I'll be accessible. So watch and make sure, that I'm posting every day or two, because I'll do that. Real good about that. And I might text you once or twice, every couple of days. But I'm not going to be reachable, because I wouldn't be reachable unless I was at a park.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
So it's you can't just call me.
Right.
That isn't going to happen. So we'll have to sort of schedule that. And that was part of how it worked. So depending on where I was going, same thing when I went to Vietnam, not that the connectivity was a problem there, but I was wanting to be disconnected. So it was leave me be and let them know what to expect. I know a lot of people post on social media, and that is one of the ways that I definitely make sure that my family knows that I'm available, right? So if I can't call you and you haven't heard from me in a day or two, don't stress. Go look on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, exactly.
Something in the last 24 hours. I'm likely still alive then.
Right. I should be okay. Right.
Right. And so kind of giving them that heads up of what to expect is helpful. And I have used everything from Skype and WhatsApp to Google Hangouts to all of those types of technologies to be able to chat with my family and friends, and text messages. But again, testing those ahead of time helps too, so you're sure that we know how to work with that and how to use the technology.
Right. Well, just that communication, I think that's really important, because if you're typically a person that stays really in touch with your mom or older relatives, or even if you have kids, even if you think, oh, they're fine, they're out on, they're grown, they're on their own, you don't know at what point, if they're used to hearing from you or seeing you and all of a sudden it just goes quiet, if you don't alert them to that, you would hopefully expect that they would be concerned. So you got to let them know ahead of time, right? What the expectation or your expectation is, hey, I'm going to be with this group. We're going to be really, really busy. And with the time change, I may not be able to actually talk to you one-on-one, but you're right. Yeah. Letting them know that, hey, I'll post something on Facebook or post a photo on Instagram. Those are really good tips for people.
Yeah, and it prevents you from having to make a bunch of calls, right? Hey, I'm alive kind of thing. And like you said, if they don't know, when I've done my research, then I try to communicate, okay, here's what I know about the connectivity issues I'm going to have, right? It's not going to be easy, or it's going to be difficult, so that the people who are going to be concerned don't have to stress or worry about it.
Right, yeah.
But I do find that despite social media's drawbacks and the problems with it, it is really helpful that I can post something and now everybody sees it. I don't have to individually communicate with each person. They all know and can kind of see what's happening without me have to make a phone call to 5 or 6 people. So,
right. And it may,
helpful.
I know some people don't always think about it, but as adults, I know I always try to provide a list of my plan, maybe where I'm staying or what cities or even hotels and phone numbers. That way, just in case ahead of time. And it's not always something that you think of because you don't always check in anymore as such with your, with grown
Parents.
kids or your older parents. But, in these situations when I travel, I try to here's where I plan to be. So even if something, God forbid, happens to them, that hopefully someone would reach out and know where to find me.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have kind of a backup plan like that
Yeah.
where you let someone know, like if the world is ending on
Right.
either end, you know how to find me. You can reach out to me here in this way, and otherwise they're just at a loss, right? If they
Right.
call you, you don't answer the phone, and they text you and you don't answer the phone. But if somebody at least close to you is like, oh, it's okay because she only checks in every 2 days, so we have to wait,
Right.
or that kind of stuff is helpful to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the fun of going, right? Is that you get to see things, and sometimes you get to disconnect, right? Nobody is
Right,
waiting to call.
exactly. Right, yeah. You
It's
can disappear and just escape and kind of be in your own world for a bit. I think that is important for people too, to do that.
yeah, do that. Okay, well, I think we've wrapped up. We've got about 25, 30 minutes. We're almost at the end. So we'll let people ask questions.
Yeah.
Section, and we'll do that.
And then you'll be sharing a few of those tips too in the description of, which I think would be really helpful. I know some of those things I hadn't thought of myself. So.
Yeah, I'll put some of those in the description. All right. Thanks, April.
All right. Thanks, Cindy.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.